He was Hollywood's loudest liberal icon, until leaked emails revealed a $600 million smear plot. What happened next dismantled his career, empowered his enemy, and silenced an industry. For years, Robert De Niro had been more than a movie star. He was a political force. Every award show speech, late-night rant, or viral panel appearance carved deeper into his image, the fearless liberal warrior. He shouted when others stayed quiet, attacked when others hedged, and for a long time, he was rewarded for it. The industry stood with him, not always because they agreed, but because his outrage sold tickets, drove ratings, and gave voice to a certain kind of righteous exhaustion. Networks fed on him. Streaming services built specials around his monologues. His memoirs sold out in days. And when an election loomed, strategists behind closed doors would quietly ask, "Can we get Niro on this?" No one questioned the sharpness of his language. Empty-headed fascist, election snake, crypto-Nazi. These weren't slips. They were lines crafted, rehearsed, and delivered with the precision of someone who knew the attention they would generate. To many, that was the point. He was entertainment that punched up. Then came Caroline Leavitt. Young. Conservative. Articulate. A minor congressional candidate in New Hampshire, at first. But she was growing. Not just in the polls, but in cultural power. Her team was sharp. Her social media discipline outpaced entire campaigns. For Niro, she was a symbol of what he hated most, a rising figure who used the language of freedom to sell what he considered regression. So when their paths collided during a live-streamed political debate segment, the moment seemed built for him. Niro unleashed. Called her a manufactured mouthpiece of fascism. Accused her of backing covert digital attacks on minority districts. The audience applauded. The clips trended. He was back, they said. Sharp as ever. But somewhere behind the noise, a quiet line had been crossed. It was not just that the accusations were false. It was that they had been planned. A conservative news site published a leaked email. At first, it barely registered. The platform wasn't taken seriously. But the email was real, and worse, it came from Niro's own publicist. It referenced escalation plans for the Leavitt interview. A media pressure strategy. And most damning, we don't need full sourcing. We need repetition. The message could have been shrugged off, until the Washington Post confirmed its authenticity. Then, the unraveling began. The Washington Post headline was brief but devastating. Coordinated smear campaign? Emails link Robert De Niro to targeted disinformation. Within hours, the story crossed the line from political drama to national scandal. The Post team had verified not just the initial leak, but a trove of emails. Communications between Niro's PR firm, allied influencers, and two activist groups showed a pattern, deliberate framing of Caroline Leavitt as a danger to democracy, regardless of factual support. Talking points were distributed, hashtags manufactured. Niro's televised remarks matched the script nearly word for word. Public reaction fractured instantly. His supporters called it a witch hunt, a right-wing trap. Others, even among loyal fans, hesitated. There were no forgeries here. No ambiguity. The words were his team's. The tone was unmistakable. Late-night hosts, once quick to book him, went silent. One show canceled his upcoming appearance with no explanation. A book deal was paused. Pending legal developments. Niro's inner circle shrank rapidly. Former allies declined to comment. One Democratic strategist was quoted anonymously. He was useful until he wasn't. Then came the lawsuit. Leavitt's legal team filed a federal defamation claim, $600 million. Not just for what was said on air, but for what had been coordinated off it. They cited actual malice, the rare and high bar for public figures. But the evidence, internal memos, strategy emails, and flagged edits to talking points, was compelling. Niro's lawyers called it absurd. A threat to free speech. But behind the scenes, the panic was real. One of his advisors, caught on a hot mic, was blunt. "This is bigger than image rehab. This is existential." News outlets ran cautious takes. CNN. Complex questions about satire and intent. NPR. Where does sharp critique become defamation? But the public was less nuanced. The hashtag Niro disaster trended globally for 3 days. Meanwhile, Leavitt's rise accelerated. She did not gloat. She made no appearances beyond a short statement. "This is not about me. This is about truth." The evidence speaks for itself. Her refusal to engage in spectacle became her advantage. Niro, in contrast, stumbled. In a carefully staged interview, he said, "I'm an artist, not an operative. I raise ideas, I don't direct campaigns." But viewers noticed the shift. He looked smaller. Defensive. Less like a firebrand, more like a man trying to control damage already done. And then, CNN revealed a new detail, a second email, authenticated by forensic analysts. "If this doesn't stick, make it stick. She needs to be ruined before midterms." The sender, one of Niro's senior strategists. The CC line, Robert De Niro. The heir left the room. The lawsuit was no longer theoretical. A federal judge denied Niro's motion to dismiss, citing clear and substantial evidence that supported claims of actual malice. Trial was set for late spring in Washington, D.C. Legal analysts called it the most significant defamation case against a celebrity in decades. By the time Niro arrived at the courthouse for his first hearing, the crowd was already there. Protesters. Reporters. Fans, though fewer now. His walk from the black SUV to the courthouse doors was filmed from 10 angles. The man who once lit up red carpets now walked in silence, wearing a plain gray suit and an unreadable face. Caroline Leavitt entered earlier. No cameras. No entourage. Her team moved quickly, quietly. It was strategy. Let the circus swirl around Niro. Let the contrast do the work. Inside the courtroom, Leavitt's attorneys were efficient. The lead litigator, a former Supreme Court clerk, spoke with quiet control. He didn't attack Niro's politics. He made it about pattern and intent. "This isn't about opinion," he said in opening remarks. "This is about knowingly constructing a lie and pushing it into the bloodstream of American media." Niro's defense tried to reframe everything as political theater. They invoke satire, allegory, even artistic license. But witnesses told a different story. Former aides testified to closed-door meetings where Leavitt was described as too clean to beat honestly. One former staffer described the language used by Niro's strategist. Controlled demolition of her reputation. And then came the audit trail. A forensic expert presented logs from Niro's teleprompter edits. The text of his viral TV rant against Leavitt showed early drafts with legal qualifiers, words like, allegedly, and sources suggest. Those words were removed manually. By Niro. The final version accused her outright. The courtroom was silent as the expert read aloud. Niro personally approved the final version, characterizing Ms. Leavitt as a verified threat, without substantiation. The phrase, actual malice, once legal jargon, was now unavoidable. Outside, progressive allies grew distant. Leavitt's name started to appear in policy circles, not just as a politician, but as a force. She was invited to speak at think tanks, fundraisers, and one-on-one sessions with Senate leaders. Strategists whispered, this wasn't just a case anymore. It was a launch pad. Niro's agent issued a quiet termination. His PR firm released a one-sentence goodbye. Former collaborators respected the process and moved on. The man who once embodied liberal resistance now watched clips of his own downfall replayed nightly. In the courtroom, he was silent. Outside, he was alone. And the trial was only halfway done. As the trial entered its third week, media coverage reached saturation. Every major outlet dedicated nightly segments. Podcasts dissected witness testimony. Substack newsletters ran deep dives into legal strategy. The case had moved beyond Robert De Niro and Caroline Leavitt. It had become a referendum on speech, celebrity, and consequence. Public sentiment shifted again. Not towards sympathy, but fatigue. Once iconic videos of Niro's past speeches resurfaced online, cut together with damning text overlays. Old lines like, "These people want to take your rights," were now juxtaposed with phrases from the email leaks. "If this doesn't stick, make it stick." The edits didn't need commentary. The contrast was enough. Leavitt, meanwhile, remained largely silent. Her team rejected offers for exclusive interviews. She gave brief statements outside the courthouse. No outrage. No celebration. Just a single message, repeated consistently. This isn't personal. It's about responsibility. It worked. Her approval numbers rose steadily, especially among independent voters and suburban moderates. Even liberal editorial boards began to shift tone, no longer defending Niro, but expressing concern about what his actions had jeopardized. Then came the video. Leaked footage from a closed-door deposition, grainy, likely recorded illegally, surfaced on a fringe platform before racing across mainstream feeds. In it, Niro, exhausted, visibly angry, snapped at his own lawyers. "Why are we pretending I didn't want her finished? That was the whole *******ing point." The words exploded. CNN's legal panel called it a nail in the coffin. The New York Times ran the headline, "Intent Captured." Within hours, Niro's final major sponsor severed ties. His memoir was officially cancelled. A prestigious university rescinded an honorary degree he had received 4 years earlier. A former late-night ally devoted an entire monologue to mocking him. "If you're going to call someone a threat to democracy, maybe check your group chat first." Niro didn't respond publicly. There was nothing to say. His defense team floated settlement offers quietly, desperately. Leavitt's camp declined every one. "She doesn't want a deal," one legal commentator said. "She wants the record." Inside political circles, her name transformed. No longer just a congresswoman, she became a strategic asset. Operatives whispered that she could win statewide. One high-ranking aide floated her as a potential VP pick, off the record, of course. As the trial neared closing arguments, it was no longer clear who Robert De Niro had been before this. The passionate actor? The political voice? The cautionary tale? The jury hadn't spoken yet. But the country already had. Closing arguments were swift. Leavitt's counsel, measured to the end, reiterated the core issue: not speech, but deception. Not disagreement, but defamation. "This case," the attorney said flatly, "is not about silencing opinion. It is about what happens when a lie is repeated with power, for profit, and without remorse. No dramatic rhetoric. No personal jabs. Just facts, and the evidence that had accumulated: emails, edits, depositions." Niro's team leaned on abstraction. "If we punish political speech," his lead attorney warned, "we chill every comedian, every activist, every satirist." But the argument, though technically sound, landed poorly. Jurors didn't need hypotheticals. They had evidence, specific, deliberate, authenticated. Before deliberations even began, court watchers knew the direction. When the jury returned, just 6 hours later, the room held its breath. The foreman stood. The judge asked for the verdict. Yes, Niro was liable for defamation. Yes, Niro was liable for intentional reputational harm. And yes, the jury would award punitive damages. The final figure came minutes later: $614 million. There was no gasp. No reaction at all, really. Just silence. The kind that settles when everyone realizes the thing they were waiting for has arrived, and it's worse than expected. Niro didn't speak. He didn't cry. He stared at the table, unmoving, even as the reporters began filing out. His lawyers leaned in to whisper, but he didn't answer. His hands remained on the table, white-knuckled. Leavitt stood. Smoothed her jacket. Shook her attorney's hand. No smile. No expression of victory. Just a small nod. Her press conference outside the courthouse was short. "This is not a personal win. It is a message. A warning. That even in chaos, the truth still has value." The video aired across all networks within minutes. Inside the courtroom, Niro remained seated alone. The cameras were gone. The lights dimmed. His name, once shouted across red carpets and campaign fundraisers, now trailed only in footnotes. The image of him sitting in that empty courtroom, the gray suit, the lowered head, circulated briefly, then vanished beneath the next headline. But for those who had followed his career, it was final. He had fought for the spotlight. And in the end, the spotlight destroyed him. The fallout was immediate and relentless. Within 48 hours of the verdict, court officers began executing liens. A judge denied Niro's emergency motion to delay payment, citing the jury's overwhelming clarity. His Beverly Hills estate, long the centerpiece of glossy magazine spreads, was among the first to go. A beachfront condo in Miami Beach followed. The art collection, 30 years of acquisitions, now assessed at liquidation value, was boxed up by court-appointed receivers. A terse, unsigned statement emerged from his team. "We respectfully disagree with the verdict and are exploring all legal remedies." But there was no public fight left. No interviews. No rebuttals. Niro was simply gone. Sighted once, briefly, outside a Santa Monica grocery store. Shoulders hunched. Baseball cap pulled low. A photograph emerged, blurry and poorly lit. No one chased it. Inside entertainment circles, his absence caused only minor disruption. Studios quietly pulled his name from projects still in development. A Netflix docuseries he had been scheduled to narrate re-recorded its audio with another actor. Not out of politics. Just risk assessment. He was no longer a draw. He was a liability. Meanwhile, Caroline Leavitt was everywhere, and yet, nowhere gratuitous. She turned down late-night offers. Avoided cable sparring. Her appearances were methodical. Infrastructure town halls. Education roundtables. Campaign stops where she took questions and gave careful, almost boring answers. It was discipline, not modesty. She knew that spectacle was no longer her asset. Silence, used strategically, was more powerful. Her Senate campaign launched 2 months after the verdict. The announcement was minimal, a speech from a podium in Manchester. No music. No tears. No mention of Niro. The truth matters, she said. Character matters. And so do consequences. Donors responded immediately. Small checks, large checks, institutional support. National Republicans who had once dismissed her now lined up for early endorsement meetings. Her polling soared, not just among conservatives but with suburban independents, many of whom, polls showed, had followed the trial closely. Yet beyond the headlines, a deeper shift was underway. Studios, networks, and public figures began scrubbing their digital presence. Politically charged clips vanished from video platforms. Talent agencies issued private memos advising clients to pause partisan commentary. Not as censorship. As risk management. Activist celebrities, once omnipresent during campaign seasons, grew noticeably quieter. Fewer statements. Less fire. More caution. The Niro verdict hadn't ended political speech. But it had placed a cost on recklessness. A real one. With a dollar sign. Back in Los Angeles, Niro's last known property was marked for auction. A weathered film festival invitation remained stuck under his windshield wiper, faded from sun and rain. No one removed it. No one asked why it was still there. He had wanted to be remembered. Now, the industry remembered only the silence he left behind. 6 months later, Robert De Niro lived in quiet exile. A rented apartment just west of Santa Monica. The furniture was sparse. The phone, mostly silent. He answered only to his attorney, who continued to file appeals, motions that were routinely denied and no longer drew media attention. The number, $614 million, still loomed, though much of it had already been converted into court-managed payments and asset transfers. He no longer walked in public without sunglasses. Not out of vanity, but habit. The same instincts that once pulled him toward cameras now recoiled from them. At grocery stores, he was occasionally recognized, but no one approached. The moment had passed. So had the outrage. Now there was just space. And time. Caroline Leavitt's ascent didn't stall. It accelerated. Her Senate campaign gained not only momentum, but form. Strategy memos from national operatives showed her leading in critical counties. She dominated primary polling by double digits. At a closed-door event in D.C., a senior party official used the phrase, "next-generation leadership," while pointing directly at her name on a fundraising slide. She never mentioned Niro. She didn't need to. His name became a caution inside both political and entertainment worlds. A warning passed quietly from agent to client. Don't go full Niro. Not out of fear of opposing views, but fear of mistaking attention for immunity. In boardrooms, risk assessments now included a new line, past political conduct, amplified or defamatory. Legal scholars debated the trial's implications. Some praised the outcome as a long-overdue check on celebrity influence. Others warned of a chilling effect on satire, advocacy, and public discourse. But the country, broadly, had already moved on. Trust in political commentary from public figures declined. Activist endorsements mattered less. A-list personalities that once led marches now reconsidered statements entirely. And Leavitt, quietly but unmistakably, became the face of that change. She didn't lean into culture war. She didn't perform outrage. Her speeches remained plain, and often uneventful. But that, too, was strategic. She had seen what spectacle could destroy. As winter approached, Politico published a long-form profile titled, "The Leavitt Doctrine, Discipline, Distance, and the End of Celebrity Politics." Inside, one quote stood out. From a senior Democratic advisor, off the record, She didn't beat Niro by arguing louder. She beat him by letting the evidence speak. And that was the final turn. It wasn't Niro's fall that changed the game. It was how little it mattered after it happened. In his apartment, he read the article. No rage. No denial. Just stillness. He had believed that the loudest voice always won. That impact came from fury. From speed. From dominance. Now, he understood what had undone him. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a pause. A refusal. A single sentence said calmly, in front of a camera. The evidence speaks for itself. And after that, no one needed to hear from him again.